I'm Dave Yovanno.
And I'm Todd Crawford.
And we're the hosts of the Partnership Economy podcast. So for the first time ever on the pod, Todd and I are excited to sit down together and reflect on the standout themes from season 5, along with our most impactful insights from all of 2024. So kicking off our wrap report of season 5, where Todd and I interviewed a total of 9 industry leaders, the first theme that stood out to us from these conversations was the fact that, drumroll please, people trust people over ads. And I want to start, Todd, with a question that is at the heart of this podcast. When was the last time you or anyone listening here made a purchase without seeking a third-party opinion? Can you remember the last time you did that, Todd? Probably not.
Well, actually, I can, and it not just in season 5, but across all the seasons. My example I always use in researching purchases is chef knives. It's just the example I've always stuck with. And over the holiday, I spent hours and hours researching Japanese kitchen knives, cutting boards, and I probably spent $1,200 to $1,500 and got 4 knives, 2 cutting boards, and I am happy and satisfied. And I could not have done that without YouTubers and creators kind of giving me insights on what to look for, the pros and cons, everything. And it obviously works.
Yeah, and I think that has become the norm now. I think for most people, the answer is rarely, where you're not out there checking to see what other people have to say about something to give you a straight scoop on what's good, what's bad about a product that you're thinking about.
We can ground this even further, David, with the release of our consumer journey report with eMarketer. We surveyed 1,000 U.S. adults and found that most shoppers discover new products weekly, but don't buy immediately. And on average, they research a product 3 times before making a decision. So there's so much data out there, and this just further reinforces it. I mean, me alone should stand as the hard, cold truth, because I research everything I buy.
When you really look at it, I think what's really being disrupted here is traditional advertising, right? So despite the $1 trillion that's spent globally, it's losing its effectiveness because people no longer trust what brands themselves are saying. People trust what other people have to say about a product. These are friends, they're creators, there's publishers, there's reviewers. These are real people who've had experience or have some trusted opinion on a product that just happens to not be the brand themselves. So I think, the research that you're quoting there really speaks to that.
Yeah, and it reminds me of my discussion with Carrie Curran when she said, having your brand across a diverse publisher mix increases the potential to connect with your target audience, whether they're intentionally or unintentionally looking for something to purchase. And it's all about increasing exposure to your products and services, that awareness from a trusted third party, not just you as a brand telling them it's a great product or service. And I think that's really resonating with consumers at a level, unheard of.
In order to show up in that research, brands need to be drawing alliances with these people who are talking about their products and form a partnership with them, right? There's no other option. Brands need strong advocates to share their brand messaging in these online spaces that consumers are already spending time in and going to for this trusted information. And when you think about it, this isn't a new phenomenon. People have always trusted other people more than ads, right? But I think the difference today is the level of access that people have today to commercial information. This is information about products compared to, let's say, just 10 years ago. Social commerce information is everywhere today, and consumers are leveraging it before they make that purchase. They're turning to reviews, TikTok unboxings, YouTube demonstrations, and word of mouth recommendations. And the rise of these social channels and community-driven publishing platforms like YouTube, like Instagram, like TikTok especially, I think it marks the decline of the brand-controlled narrative that has been in place for over 100 years.
It's inevitable. I mean, consumers aren't stupid, right? And they want to make a smart buying decision, and they want to learn from somebody who's already done it. In my discussions with Jeanette Oku from Beyond Influence, I thought she hit the nail on the head saying, quite simply, people buy from people, not brands. That's the trend here. And it's just, as you pointed out, in the old days, it could have been, literally word of mouth. Today, it's the internet. The access to information is astounding. I mean, just like I said, researching buying Japanese knives, it was like going down a rabbit hole. I probably watched 50 YouTube videos and creator content pieces to make my decision.
Yeah, it might be good for us to spar back and forth here a little bit on some interesting quotes from our guests. So you just mentioned Jeanette. It reminds me of the conversation I had with Jackie Pimental, who also gave a great example of this shift from a platform perspective. Jackie and I discussed how Meta's advertising model has evolved from the launch of the Facebook newsfeed in 2006 to sidebar ads to today, where brand messaging is weaved into content instead of around it. So as Jackie put it, a direct quote from her, you want to hear the brand, but you want to hear it from the people who you relate to. That's a direct quote from our conversation. I just love that.
Yeah, and if you look at the big picture, connecting with people ultimately leads to connecting with communities, and the power of communities has never been greater. And platforms like TikTok and YouTube, they've really built this type of environment where people gravitate to topics and content that they're really passionate about or want to learn more about. Ads and information is all part of that now. Whatever your interest is, there's something out there that you can get into, whether it's a Facebook group or whatever. And that's really where I think people, again, are learning about potential purchases, not just even researching existing purchases, but kind of getting pulled into a purchase that they maybe weren't initially thinking about.
Yeah, you threw out some stats at the beginning, and as a company, Impact.com, we've been tracking a lot of trends, obviously, in the space. One thing that stood out to me is that over half of Gen Z uses TikTok as their primary search engine. 70% of Gen Z and nearly as many millennials only trust a brand after conducting their own independent research. That's a monumental shift because it shows that modern consumers truly are looking to their communities for answers. TikTok encapsulated it best, I thought, when they said communities are the new demographics. And I think what this shift has evolved to is the creation of a new era of social commerce, right? Brands no longer fully control the narrative. And although that sounds scary, especially if you're a brand, I think it's actually a good thing, right? It opens the door to greater transparency, more authenticity, more effective customer acquisition. Partnerships, which, are typically with creators, with publishers, customers, even other brands or businesses, they've really become the most effective way to meet consumers where they are, right? These relationships, they're not just a marketing tactic, right? They're the foundation of being able to relate better, I think, to today's consumer, and also a key vehicle and a vessel now for growth. I think that's enough, Todd, probably on the first theme, right? And again, just to recap, we called that first theme the fact that people trust people over ads. Todd, do you want to introduce the next theme that we talked about?
If you're a brand and you're working with creators, you need to treat your partners like people, right? They're the ones that are echoing and sharing their opinions. And I think a lot of people, especially coming from more of the affiliate world, see this as a normal thing. But most people in the traditional advertising, they're not interacting with people and partners. They're interacting with marketing machines. They're plugging in their budget and seeing the results. People are at the heart of this channel, and therefore the most successful partnerships are the ones where brands treat partners like people. And that's what makes partnerships so different from traditional advertising and other paid channels. They're not just, like I said, buying those ad slots and putting dollars in and out. You're creating long-term relationships, and those people actually become an extension of your brand and continue to build content and exposure. There's more challenges to that because there's a lot more moving pieces. There's brand guidelines and other things, but what we're seeing across the board with our customers is that they're really excited about this, and this is really the right approach to getting that authenticity out there. You're not really telling them what to say. You're giving them the guidelines. And some of those guidelines erode over time because of the comfort level, but it's really the right way to build out these kinds of partnerships and channels.
I agree. And this theme especially really reminds me of something that Vanna Hahn from TikTok touched on when I talked to her. And she said, each partner is different. You have to treat them like a person, as a friend, as a family member versus just another number in your program. That really stood out to me. When you're trying to build relationships, whether it be small or at scale, it should be authentic. And she's not talking about, let's say that creator's authentic relationship with their audience. She's talking about her as a business, how she is trying to manage a relationship with the partners who are referring her business, essentially. This is what's unique, I think, about the partnership economy, this partnerships channel. It's not about transactions, right? It's about building real relationships. Even if it's something as trivial as emailing your partners, like you're sending them a text message. If you don't take the time to understand your partners and what they bring to the table, you're missing the entire point of this channel. The partnership channel, it's not like the traditional advertising channel that's very transactional, right? Where you're filling a hole in a page with an ad designed by a brand that's a slot that is sold to the highest bidder. That's the world of advertising. The world of partnerships is much deeper than that. And a major reason for that, I think, is the authenticity required by the partner and how they address their audience or their customers in making a recommendation or referral.
Yeah, and I talked with Jen Bentz from Resident Home. They sell all different brands of mattresses in line, which is a high consideration purchase. But she put it best when she explained how creators feel about brand partnerships. They don't want to work with someone and be done right after it. They want to work with one brand multiple times. They want that relationship as well, right? It builds credibility with their audience. You can treat partnerships as passive channels, but they aren't. There is that human element, and trust is the currency here. We've seen it over and over, and you've interviewed creators. I mean, they really want to partner with brands. It's not about, give me $5,000 and I'm out of here. They understand that exchange, the back and forth.
Yeah, and research that our company has done, one of the big things that has stood out to me is that, brands don't want to be working with, a lot of different creators. They'd rather work with fewer creators over a longer period of time. And guess what? Creators want the same thing. It takes time to invest in each other, to understand each other, to speak authentically, to get the deep knowledge and insight on products, to speak intelligently about it. And again, it's just another, requirement and unique characteristic of this channel. And when you treat your partners like real people, I think you're unlocking something incredible. Loyalty, right? Those authentic relationships are what inspire partners to advocate for your brand, like connecting you with new audiences, pushing customers closer to your business. Again, those relationships, they don't just happen out of thin air. They're built and they require an investment.
Yeah, when I was talking with Lacey Thompson from New Engine on this, when describing how to build a solid relationship with publishers, she said, help them understand why you're having a perspective. It's our job as a brand and agencies to have conversations and give them the information to be the best partner and to advocate for the right things to drive the business value for you. And partnerships work best when there's alignment between the goals, and you can't really force these things. Then that's where it doesn't seem as authentic. Even these relationships with your creators, it's not something you get through one phone call and one message. It is that long-term relationship where it builds and builds, and to me it creates a competitive barrier. Right now you've got these creators working for you, loyal to you, and it's much harder for someone else to come in and displace them or distract them when you've got really a great partnership that's working. All right, well, I think that covers theme 2, treating your partners like people and the importance of having a strong relationship with your creators to really build out a successful channel. So I think going into theme 3, which is creators, is pretty appropriate because I don't think we could recap season 5 or 2024 for that matter without talking about one of the fastest growing partnership types, creators. And right now, this is a tidal wave of creators coming online to talk about products, what they love, dislike, and everything in between. We're seeing this across our client base where they're just dipping their toe into it. They're already into it a year, and they're all going through very similar things. But at the end of the day, it's paying off and it's really building their business. And it's really, really exciting right now. I'm just couldn't be more excited at being in the industry for over 25 years with this kind of new facet of partnerships and exposure to consumers.
I couldn't agree more, Todd. I share the same excitement and enthusiasm from all of our recent discussions. One thing is clear: brands are trying to connect with creators. Creators are trying to connect with brands, right? And agencies, are doing their part to help foster these relationships. I think the sheer size and potential of this partnership type, it's hard to fathom. It's expected to double in size over the next 5 years, surpassing 480 billion US dollars, according to Goldman Sachs. And so, Todd, when you draw on the conversations that we've had this season, what are some of the tips that we've learned for brands who are looking to make use of this new and massive addressable market?
Yeah, I think it starts with the pitch to management and setting goals and objectives and securing budget to essentially test if you're launching, right? And what we've seen through our client base is it's a lot of the performance team that's kind of standing up the micro creator partnership strategy, where maybe PR is still handling the macro. And so one of the probably first things that kind of gets conflated is that we're going to do pure commission performance based with creators, which typically are higher in the funnel. And so you definitely don't want to maybe have that as your sole strategy, because you'll miss the mark, both in terms of compensation and mindset. When working with creators, you can often expect to pay a flat fee for them to post about your brand. This isn't to say that it's a performance contract that can't be part of the deal, but it's likely not the only way you'll be compensating your creators. There's a lot of really interesting models that brands have been using to really not only compensate but continue to keep them engaged. And that, I think, is really important, because if they're working solely on the commission, they maybe don't see the results they expect, you're going to lose that partnership.
I think this discussion topic has probably been the hottest in 2024, right? The compensation models from brands to their creator partners, essentially. And we've noticed the performance aspect really comes in when a brand wants to incentivize a creator to work with them long term, right? To continuously drive sales. This whole discussion, I think you can think of the flat fee almost as the fee that you'll pay an advertising agency to create your ad, right? This is the cost of filming, there's setup, there's posting. But when you combine this with a performance-based contract, you're paying for the creator to be a long-term sales advocate for your brand, and that just makes sense, right? The combination of a flat fee plus a performance contract, which we've often talked about as calling that a post-plus model, right? You're paying to post something which has value, plus a commission or some other bonus compensation as sales are generated. This model is definitely one to consider, as 80% of creators agree that they like this hybrid compensation model.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes the biggest hurdle to get over if the performance team is assuming this. But I think through testing um, and learnings, they adapt to that. And again, it's got to be a win-win, right? It can't just be all about the brand. And like we said, we're trying to treat our partners as people, and they need to get paid, right? So that's pretty important. And the other thing is, when it comes to a brand's mindset, you have to meet creators where they are, understanding their needs and how they're looking to evaluate you. Jeanette Oku pointed out that if you want to get serious influencers involved, they're going to look at you. And if you don't pay attention to your own social media channels, they probably won't want to work with you, because it comes back to them as well. So, this is a two-sided coin, right? You need to kind of have your ducks in a row, and kind of talk the talk as well.
Yeah, and back to the structure of the compensation model, I think it's helpful for brands, especially, to kind of frame it as, let's understand kind of the balance of control, right? Basically, where brands are heavily controlling the image, the copy, what is said, that's more like an ad. Because of the control being more brand oriented, the cost and risk should fall more to the brand, right? That's what they're used to in the traditional advertising model. You're going to pay a CPM, let's say, and you're going to take the risk on how well it performs. When brands are now working with creators, and you really want to tap into the value that you and I had just talked about around authenticity and things like that, you want to relinquish control to the creator or to the publisher to speak in their own tone and way to their audience, because they know their audience better than the brand. But because the brand's not fully controlling it, they can't take all the risk. You know what I mean? So it makes sense to shift some of the risk to performance-based, because that partner is choosing how to speak about the brand. They may actually talk about bad things about the product. The reality is, real people will still buy something knowing the weaknesses of a product, right? That's real life, right? Real life is not this perfect image of an ad, and then what you get is nowhere close to that. That's flat out lying, misperception sort of thing. But anyway, if that makes sense, just like understanding, where the balance of control sits in delivering the message. Like, the more it clearly sits with the creator, I think that creators should expect to be compensated more on a performance basis, maybe not fully, because even them posting something has value, even if it's a nominal fixed payment for the work, the effort that it takes to produce something. Get to know the brand, produce content, post it, that has value. And so that's why we heavily advocate for this hybrid or post plus sort of model. It's not just, hey, here's a product, go talk about it. It's about capturing the attention of the consumer that you're trying to get to buy and use your product. And so you want that creator or that partner to speak authentically and figure out the payment model that actually works for both sides, just considering this unique dynamic in this channel. Brands are shifting dollars into this space because they see the potential. But with that shift comes the responsibility, I think, to do it right.
When a brand thinks about guidelines for creators, I mean, the best way to think of them is that they're there to help them understand your product so that they can be authentic. And maybe there's the guidelines. We prefer you not to go outside of them, but it's not telling them what to do. It's just helping them to understand what you want said or how you see your products and services, and then let them be authentic in their voice. And I think that's where guidelines get a little too tight, because authenticity really is the key to this partnership type. Jen Bentz talked about this preference for real reviews and relatability in ad content people prefer. She highlighted that people respond best to the user-generated content produced by creators because it comes across more unpolished, saying, the content they create works so much better than getting a highly produced ad. They test the user-generated content in their own social media, and it far outperforms anything that they can produce in-house. So, that's the other benefit of this channel, is the getting rights to the user-generated content and being able to amplify your social marketing as well. I know you had a chance to talk to a creator this season. What advice did they have on how to succeed as a creator?
I had a really insightful conversation with Marcel Flores. He's a very popular creator. We did a deep dive into, what the industry is like from a creator's perspective. And I always love having these conversations. And that's actually one of the fun things I think about, the job that you and I are both in, where we get to talk to so many different actors, if you will, within this economy. And they all have their own unique perspective and dynamics, which I just find fascinating. But one thing he said, which really stood out to me, was, if you're a creator, don't create content just to go viral. He said, of course you're aiming for real virality, but don't do it just for that. That was his direct quote, right? And his point, I think, was that people need to go to your page and your content to understand who you are as a creator, right? Your niche, what they can expect from your content. And if you're constantly just trying to make viral moments happen, you might get a big hit of exposure, but people won't connect you with when they go to your page and don't understand what you stand for. He summarized it, I think, really well by saying, make sure that you're setting your brand up properly beforehand so that if you go viral, that people go to your profile and they see the same type and level of quality of content on your page. You can actually build a brand that way. So stay away from the one-hit wonders, essentially, right? Invest in your brand, have an identity, stand behind that, and have a pattern. You may get a big hit, but it's going to be very hard to replicate and get a strong following if you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah, I think that point around building a brand is really crucial. The most successful creators are the ones who think in the long term and have a vision for themselves, right? They see where they want to take their platform and their voice, and to be consistent. If someone finds your one viral moment and then they go there and there's all kinds of other chaos, it doesn't resonate. But when it's suddenly, like in my example, Japanese cooking knives, I can just go through multiple videos or YouTube shorts or full videos and really kind of go down that rabbit hole and get all the information that I need. And it's consistent and easy to consume.
Absolutely. And another trend that I didn't really fully appreciate or pay attention to until a couple of conversations this season was, let's not forget that creators are real people, right? And they go through evolutions in their lives. So like what made them popular a couple of years ago, maybe their life has changed and they're not able to kind of keep up with the same type of content that their audience from a couple of years ago demands, essentially. If you want your audience to stick by you, they need to truly connect with you. And I spoke to another creator, not this season, but in the past, Chloe Wen. And it's just been amazing to see her audience evolve alongside her. She started out making beauty and fashion content, but then brought her followers along as she bought a house and became a first-time mother. As a creator, you're going to change, right? So make sure that your audience trusts you and is loyal to you. It's just hugely important.
That's a big challenge for a lot of creators as they mature in life and just their interests evolve and change or their life changes, to kind of maintain that trust and continue to grow and deliver great content. So, are there any other quick tips you can share with aspiring creators out there based on these conversations, Dave?
Yeah, a couple. Marcel was good about providing some helpful tactical advice, especially when it comes to navigating different social platforms. He recommends YouTube, and I've heard this from a number of creators, right? Because it has a very powerful search engine functionality. It's got evergreen content. I hear this probably most often from creators. They like publishing on YouTube. That content sits out there for years. It's searchable. It's longer form. There's more monetization sort of opportunities compared to more flash in the pan, sort of content exposure and life, essentially, of content that might exist on a TikTok or even an Instagram sort of platform. So, that was one big pro tip, I think. YouTube's got a lot of great monetization options for creators, both based on ad revenue and the fact that you can put affiliate links in your video descriptions. And he also said that Instagram is great for visual storytelling and connecting with millennial audiences, whereas TikTok is great for exposure, virality, authenticity, connecting with a Gen Z audience. I think his overall advice, though, is to use filming opportunities to create multiple forms of content for each platform. For example, a full-length video for YouTube, it's high quality pictures for Instagram, and a behind the scenes video, let's say, for TikTok.
Yeah, and that really hammers home this whole idea of having to pay a little something up front, because the best creators, they're mocking up, their shoots. They know they're going out to do this. They're going to shoot content for 4 different platforms. Then they've got to go and edit it. I think some people don't realize the amount of work that goes into that. Again, you get amazing user-generated content. It connects with consumers. So that was super helpful. It's obvious when it comes to creator partnerships, there's no one size fits all formula, and we're all still actively learning in this space, but I'm sure even after season 6, we'll have more insights to share.
I'd say the last thing that I would add, just tactically, just as a point of some of the tips around how creators are working, but what's become popular is to shoot in like an 8:7 sort of format. And what they're saying is that allows you to easily, it's more of a full frame format, especially with video, where you can edit it, the same video that you capture, you can edit in vertical as well as horizontal for YouTube, so that you can get your content distributed, multiple cuts of the same content to be distributed on the different platforms. So lots of learnings. I think that's a pretty good wrap, actually, to this third theme around just creators in general, just the rise of creators, the massive opportunity, for brands to work with creators, for creators to work with brands. Interestingly enough, like surveys are still being done. People graduating high school and college, the number one job people want is to be a successful creator, right? I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So hard for us to not acknowledge that. So Todd, moving on to our next theme, maybe just a high level question. What are some other partnership types, would you say, that came up during your discussions this year?
Yeah, I think one that doesn't get enough of a spotlight, and I think it's because most of what creators and affiliates and other types of partnerships are focused more in the e-commerce world are B2B partnerships. And we have to call out B2B partnerships are becoming increasingly important in business today. There's a misconception that this refers primarily to like SaaS partnerships or reseller deals, but in reality, it means partnering with any complementary business to drive sales. It's a long-term strategy. It creates mutual value for both organizations. And we've seen quite a few companies on our platform that are focused exclusively on B2B, and it is a different animal. There's similarities. It has so much potential, and I think it's something else being under leveraged right now that has a lot of potential.
Absolutely. It makes me think of the conversation I had with Dan Armstrong from Ticketmaster. And by the way, I love these conversations because not only are we getting to meet like different actors in this ecosystem, but you're learning something about businesses that we all know, but maybe don't deeply understand how the world of Ticketmaster and concerts and events actually works. And Dan did a beautiful job of just unpacking the industry, which I found fascinating on its own, let alone, the partnership economy aspects of it. But Dan, in our conversation, talked about, two great examples that I can recall on B2B type of partnerships that Ticketmaster has under his leadership. The first was this partnership between Ticketmaster and Spotify. And this is where they're enabling listeners to book concert tickets while they're in the Spotify app and already listening to their favorite artists. The second was the partnership between Ticketmaster and travel agencies. So Ticketmaster noticed an uptick in travel and demand for live events, especially after COVID. And so they partnered with these agencies to sell event tickets. And when you hear about these partnerships, you realize that they just make sense, right? Both organizations benefit from working together, and the end consumer has a much better experience because of it. And that is the part that excites me the most, right? When you think about the world of partnerships and the people who use your product, who are other like adjacent, non-endemic sort of businesses that make sense for you to kind of, do a collab with, right? Like create a better user experience for your shared customer.
B2B partnerships are often underutilized, or they're already happening without companies realizing it themselves. One of the examples I always use is, if there's a marketing team and the CMO, there's nobody in the organization, unbeknownst to her, doing marketing. In the sales team, there's, the CRO doesn't have somebody in some other building or department doing sales. They all roll up under this conductor. And I think a lot of B2B partnerships and things like that can happen, kind of be fragmented, and there's no real conductor, there's no plan, there's no strategy. And I think harnessing those teams together or getting a more coordinated strategy is really key to, obviously making this successful, but really being aligned and measuring and getting results. Because it can't happen like that, this kind of BD here, BD there, or whatever you want to call it for these types of partnerships. I think that you end up missing the mark.
I think a lot of people that hear us talk like this are a bit overwhelmed about even where to start. Like you've had a lot of conversations this season. You've obviously are a veteran in this industry. And I'll kind of do a fast follow because I'll give you my thoughts as well. But just curious for you to maybe unpack how you think brands should consider forming these B2B partnerships and utilizing this untapped potential.
You have to start with adopting a consumer first point of view, right? Where would my customer naturally look for information, validation, or solutions that I offer? And you realize that other business consumers interact with come to mind. Some of the examples you gave, which was just a natural fit. I remember the first time I saw that Ticketmaster inside of Spotify when looking at a band, seeing that they're on tour and be able to click in and buy a ticket. It's super organic, feels natural. It's not forced. It's not advertising from my perspective as a Spotify user. So I think, it's really trying to, get where your customers are trying to make a decision or learning, and finding those other businesses or that's just complementary, I mean, it's silly, but most shoe companies sell socks and vice versa. But, just as a simple example, if you're buying these shoes, we don't sell socks, but here's a coupon or a deal for socks from this company that we think are great fit for this shoe. Again, it's that type of partnership opportunities that people should be looking for.
Yeah, and just to pile on, I think a very simple but very powerful idea is to interview your customers, right? Learn about the other businesses that they interact with throughout their journey. So, for example, you can ask, where do they go for information about your product type? What platforms, what businesses, other resources that are part of their buying process? And I think the answers will reveal like very valuable partnership opportunities, leads, for you to go and pursue to form an alliance with those other businesses or those other partners where they're sourcing information or where they're conducting business. And, I think what you're going to find is that these are the ones that are going to naturally align with that customer journey and align with you. And so by forming these partnerships, you're not just forcing yourself into the conversation, you're meeting your customers exactly where they already are. And I think that's the most powerful opportunity here.
Yeah, and in terms of putting these strategic partnerships into action, Adam Glazer from Partner Commerce, which they actually focus on B2B partnerships for clients, provided some helpful advice. He said affiliate becomes a resource to the rest of the company to go out and get those partners, to incentivize them and reward them for creating demand and supporting them in active campaigns. Essentially, if you already have the tools and process to run your affiliate program, it's not a huge leap to apply them to new B2B partnerships to explore. And one of the things, a common theme I hear, whether it's working with creator teams or B2B, is you have this center of excellence around your performance team. They're used to recruiting, onboarding, activating, incentivizing, measuring, paying, contracting, all the mechanics that can be leveraged by this team. And then you can have your biz dev kind of hunters out there finding the partnerships, negotiating it, and then having this center of excellence help enable those partnerships. And I think that's when the company gets coordinated. That's where this really sees a lot of momentum.
All right, that's a good wrap on our fourth theme around the trend of B2B partnerships. Let's switch gears and cover off our fifth and last theme for the season. It's actually one of the best parts, I think, of this podcast. You and I have teamed up, and you and I are very much aligned that people are really after insight about their own career growth, right? As a listener of our podcast, and so I think you and I always try and get some insight and some feedback and some stories from the guests that we interview to help listeners, learn right from other people's experiences. We're asking them to basically just talk a lot about, how they got to where they are today and what advice do they have. And it's just really been incredibly insightful to hear them describe exactly what makes them successful. I think it's only fitting to wrap up this episode with the best career advice that we heard in season 5, as well as our own advice for listeners.
Yeah, Dave, you spoke with a few guests who've had long career journeys at the same company. And I guess, I'm always curious too, what was their advice for moving up within an organization, which can be challenging, especially a big company.
So I think every one of my guests had excellent feedback and insight to share. Dan Armstrong, who's been a Ticketmaster for 10 years, shared a very powerful message, I think, in our episode. He said, never shy away from doing the unglamorous work. You have to see what contributes to the organization and how you can be part of that. That was a direct quote. And he described one of his early jobs when he was cleaning out keyword lists all day long. And, while it wasn't glamorous, he knew it was going to be contributing to the overall success of the business. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Jackie Pimentel's entire career journey is another one that comes to mind. She's a great example of taking a risk based on passion and instinct. She went from a stable job at PwC, big accounting firm, to applying for an entry-level job at Facebook before everyone knew what Facebook was or could be. She felt like there was opportunities in the digital space, and she was spending a lot of time on Facebook as a user. You fast forward to where she is today, and she's leading a global team at Meta. She also highlighted 4 qualities: humility, flexibility, positivity, and accountability, which I think we can all strive to embody. But I just love the key message and what she's saying there around just going for it, right? If you're passionate about something, go for it, and you can have an incredible experience to show for it.
I would say, summarizing what I heard in the recent seasons, is curiosity, wanting to know more about the business instead of just your silo or your department. Going into, I heard, people going into larger marketing meetings, getting into those maybe to just learn about other channels, how they're measuring, what they're doing. So the curiosity is a big thing. I think being smart about data, being able to present data in unique ways to help the company see things, different perspectives of the same data. And then, as we kind of illustrated here, I mean, standing up a micro creator strategy or coordinating and expanding a B2B strategy. I mean, you're doing something right for the company. You're bringing in revenue. You're being open. You've got that open loop. Your feedback. You're changing and adapting, and you're pushing the success. And we see that across a lot of examples in the conversations I've had, where that's exactly what they're doing, and that stands out to leadership. Taking the initiative and pushing, and not getting steamrolled, being able to fight for what you think is right, and getting things done. Really can move you up internally within a company very easily, because they see the potential and they're willing to put you on that next project or initiative.
Yeah, and I would just add, on top of what we learned from Dan and Jackie, which I very much agree with. Dan, again, talking about not being afraid to do unglorious work, getting your hands dirty. Jackie talking about, taking risk, pursuing the stuff that you're passionate about. From my unique perspective, I have daughters that are 25 and 24. So I'm kind of dating myself here a little bit, but I am seeing how this next generation is coming into the workforce. And it's interesting. They have a reputation. This generation has a reputation of looking for shortcuts or hacks. I don't necessarily see that. I see this as a hardworking, passionate, people want to work. They want to be successful. I would agree, generally speaking, that people are looking for, kind of the quickest path forward. But I think they're mislabeled that way, largely speaking. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, Todd, about how people feel about this generation, but I'm especially close to it. I see all their friends. I see how hard it is for them to get jobs out of college, but I also see how hard they're working for it. There are some easy things to do that don't require a lot of talent, right? Being on time, having a strong work ethic, putting in the effort, the body language that you put off, right? A lot of people feel entitled sometimes, maybe, depending on how they were raised. You got to work past that. So having positive body language, engaging body language, the energy that you bring to the job, your attitude, your passion, being coachable, doing extra, being prepared. Like, those are all easy things to do, especially for those who are early in their career and want to, grow and have purpose in their lives. That's the other thing I've recognized about this generation. It's not just about making a lot of money. I do think, everything that they see on social media, I think, money is a big part of it, but I really do think that everyone in life, they should be looking for purpose. I think that is a path to happiness, like locking in on something that drives you. And so, put all this together and find a way to pursue it and be happy, essentially.
Yeah. And I think connecting with your peers, asking questions, hopefully you work for a company that's open book and, anybody can go to you or me in our company and ask a question or get advice or feedback. So I think, that's obviously something that's helpful too. And I love seeing new employees in the office and just their energy and how they're interacting with other people. It seems to energize everyone else. So, you make your career, it doesn't happen. So, you need to be in the driver's seat and you just need to have a little confidence. And like you said, just put your best effort forward.
If you don't mind, I want to pile on and underscore what you just said, because I very much agree with that. And that is being confident to put yourself out there. Like, I think people early in their careers don't realize how accessible, people who have experience are and are open to having a conversation. I love it when people come up to me directly and want to book time on my calendar or ask my advice on something. I think a lot of people think I'm too busy, or they're not important enough, or whatever it is. And I think you and I pride ourselves on being accessible, being a very flat, organization at impact.com. And it's just who we are as people. Like, want to invest in, the next generation and pay it forward and help folks out and help people, kind of grow in their careers. And so I really encourage people, especially early in your career, to don't be afraid to reach out and find a mentor, at least a conversation with somebody who has the experience that you're after. And, even if it's just 15 minutes with, some regular check-ins down the road throughout the year, that's incredibly valuable, right? To get, just a guiding piece of advice. I remember in college, I had a professor tell me that he saw me as like a product manager at Procter & Gamble. Just that one thing he said, it was just an office hour thing. That one tip set me in a whole direction to go want to be a product guy, right? And so, it's like, that influence. I understand the power of that advice and that influence. I think a lot of people in your position, Todd, in my position, understand that as we get older and want to share that information, and just really encourage people to reach out and seek it. Don't be afraid. Okay, so that's pretty much a wrap here, Todd. So just want to thank our listeners for tuning in to another great season of the Partnership Economy podcast, listening to our first ever joint recap episode here. We'll look to do more in the future. Can't wait for you to hear what we've got lined up for season 6. We'll see you on the pod.